This is Kayla, and as you can tell, we are Facebook Living from home today. So we're trying to practice good social distancing in the office, and so we are Facebook Living from home today. Today's recipe is a muffin recipe. So hopefully you were able to get your muffin kit. They were left on the front porch at the office. But if you're watching and you didn't get one, there were a few extras, so you're welcome to go check back and see if there's some left, and you can follow this video a little bit later. So first things first, we want to wash our hands. I just washed mine, so we are trying to be extra careful in spreading germs right now, so make sure you wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. Use hot soapy water, making sure we kill all the germs there. And then, so today's recipe, it is chocolate chip oatmeal muffins, but actually this recipe can be used for the state fair. I added chocolate chips just for good measure, but if you omit the chocolate chips, it is the same recipe that is eligible for state fair. So you're welcome to keep this recipe and make it again in August, and we'll take it to the state fair for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the things that you need at home is we need an egg, one egg, and then you'll need some milk a little bit later. And then also I just have a muffin tin. I've got cooking spray. We have 2 mixing bowls. So this is actually like a giant measuring cup, but it works really good as a mixing bowl. I've got measuring spoons and a fork for whisking. So that is pretty much all we need that I can think of right now. And then, of course, your muffin kit. So I'm going to go ahead and open our muffin kit. Walker, I see you're ready to make muffins. I'm ready too. All right, so you should have your recipe in your muffin kit. So I've got one here that we're going to use. And I'm going to go ahead and get everything out. So I've got baking powder, chocolate chips, you should have a little bit of salt, oil, so that is wrapped in saran wrap, so hopefully it didn't leak, sugar, and then we have our flour and our oats. So that is everything that we will need to make our muffins. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and spray our pan and set it aside. So, and this is Ivy here. She's my little helper. She cleans up anything that falls on the floor. It's her job. Alright, so we're going to set that aside. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix our dry ingredients first. So, one thing that I already forgot, of course, is my measuring cups. So you will need a few measuring cups as well. So I'm going to grab those. Alright, so I've got my measuring cups. I think we should be able to use just a third measuring cup, a dry measuring cup, if you have one of those. I think that might be the only one we'll need. So, first things first, the first ingredient is 2/3 cups of flour. So, we're going to measure that out of our flour bag. And it's kind of difficult measuring out of a baggie, I learned. So we're going to dump that in there. And then I'm just going to pour the rest of this in here. And honestly, it should be about 2/3 cups even because I pre-measured, but double check me on my measurements. Might be more, might be less. Like this one is a little bit more, I think. So we've got our 2/3 cups of flour, and then we need 1/3 cup of rolled oats. So that is in your baggie labeled oats. So we are going to dump our oats into our measuring cup. Again, it's a little hard doing it from a baggie instead of a container. Alright, I'm going to dump that in there. And then we have to add in the sugar, the baking powder, and the salt. So sugar, we need 3 tablespoons. So I've got my tablespoons here. And I'm I'm going to open up my little sugar container. And then we're going to do 3 level scoops of sugar. So 1, 2, and I'm going to pour the last one in here. And that was 3 exactly. So 3 tablespoons of sugar. And then we need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So I already have this measure up for you, but it is important to note that it is baking powder and not baking soda. So I'm going to measure out a teaspoon of baking powder in there. Dump that in there. And then lastly, for our dry ingredients, we are doing just an 1/8 teaspoon of salt. So if you do not have, not all measuring spoons have an 1/8 teaspoon on there. Mine does, but if you don't, you can just use a 1/4 teaspoon and just measure till about halfway filled up. So it's really not a lot. So just a tiny bit of salt. So then I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. Just combine it evenly, and I'll show you guys. It just looks like a powdery mixture, which is what it is. So now we're going to go ahead and mix our wet ingredients. So our first wet ingredient is an egg, and the recipe calls for just an egg yolk. I actually have this recipe for you guys. So the original one called for a whole egg, just 1 whole egg. So I wanted to cut back on the egg a little bit, but still keeping the yolk because that's what emulsifies it, or kind of what makes the end product kind of hold together a little bit. So we are going to separate our eggs. So that's why I have a separate bowl, because we are just going to be using the egg yolk. So I'm going to crack our egg into here, and we're cracked in half, and then we just pass the yellow part, the yolk, we just pass that back in between the 2 halves of the shells. And that kind of helps get the white off. But if you get a little bit of white in there, that's okay. And then we dump that into our mixing. And then I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands again because I touched raw egg. So alright. So we've got our egg in there. And then we need 2 tablespoons of oil. So if you want to measure this out, you can. I'm thinking it's going to be a little messy. So if you want to just trust me that I measured out 2 tablespoons and go ahead and dump it in there, you can. Which is what I'm going to do. Alright. And then we need 6 tablespoons of milk. So what I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier, because it's going to be kind of hard to pour this giant jug of milk into little tablespoons. So I have a smaller measuring cup here that I'm going to pour a little bit of milk into. And then I will measure out 6 tablespoons that way. And it's a liquid measuring cup, so it's got a little spout on it, so it just makes it easier. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to count so I don't lose track. 5 and 6. Alright, good deal. So then I'm just going to whisk all of this up. And then we are going to combine this with our dry mixture. So we're going to add the liquid to the dry ingredients. At this point, I like to go back through and make sure I've added everything, just because I do forget sometimes. So we've done our flour, we've added our rolled oats, we've added our sugar, our baking powder, our salt, and then in the liquid mixture we have an egg yolk, oil, milk, and then we'll add chocolate chips at the end. So I'm going to just pour liquid into our dry, And then we're just going to stir that up. So it is going to be a little lumpy, and I'll show you guys when I get it mixed up. But the key is you don't want to over mix it because it can make the muffins kind of tough and not as moist and soft as we want them. So you just want to mix it till all the white powdery stuff is gone. So it should look something like that, if y'all can see that. And then we're going to add in our chocolate chips. So I'm going to use the same measuring spoon. So we're doing 2 heaping tablespoons of chocolate chips. So heaping, that just means we're just going to fill that bad boy up, right? We're going to do 2 heaping tablespoons. I'm not going to lie, I actually wanted to do 3 tablespoons, but 2 was all I could fit in these little containers. So we get 2 tablespoons of chocolate chips. And if you wanted, I mean, you could add nuts or dried fruit or something like that if you like that kind of thing, but I like chocolate, so we did chocolate. Alright, so then we're just going to mix those in. Again, we don't want to over stir it. And then we are going to go ahead and fill up our muffin cups. So I'm going to get some of this stuff out of the way. If you all can't tell, I'm kind of a messy cook. So we'll set this aside so I've got room. And so we're going to fill up our muffin cups about 2/3 of the way. Remember, we've already sprayed our pan, so if you haven't done that, go ahead and do that. And then I just use a regular spoon. Some people like to use like an ice cream scoop or something like that. But we're just going to fill up our muffins. And as the recipe says, we should get about 5 to 6 muffins out of this. So if you doubled the recipe, you get 10 to 12 muffins. And if you wanted to use muffin liners instead of spraying the pan, that's fine too. But I didn't have any, so I just sprayed my pan and that works. I know when I did this earlier, I only got 5 muffins, so I guess it depends on how big you want your muffins to be. I guess I like mine kind of big. Get a paper towel. Like I said, I'm kind of messy, and I got some of the batter on the pan, and that'll burn, and it won't mess it up. It just kind of smells bad and makes a mess. So we've got our muffin pans filled up. I'm about 2/3 way. That one's kind of little. But then we just pop that in the oven at 400, and we set a timer for 20 minutes. And then in 20 minutes, you'll have your muffins. So I did do a batch before so you guys could kind of see the end product. So they turned out pretty good. 20 minutes at 400 seemed just about perfect. I guess depending on your oven. For mine, it worked good. But yeah, I haven't tried them yet. So I was going to go ahead and try them. See how they are. Well, you guys let me know what you think too. So... oh, there. They're pretty good. They'll be a good warm. These are cooled off. But they are pretty good. I feel like whoever writes the 4-H curriculum needs to add a little bit more sugar. They could be a little bit sweeter. But they're good. And again, that is a state fair recipe. So if you want to make those and enter them in the state fair, we would highly encourage that. And then also, if you make these muffins, post a picture of yourself in the comments. Either of you making the recipe or you with the final product. We would love to see it. And you all keep safe and healthy out there. And we will see you soon.